I heard this voice in there, and he was bossing me around, telling me what to do on the guitar, and being really hard on me, and I didn't know who he was until years later, I saw this documentary they'd done on Tom Dowd. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And I was riding in a van back from a gig, and they had put it on, and I went, God, it was Tom Dowd. He was giving me a hard time, yeah.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Today's episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is sponsored by Roswell Pro Audio, maker of handcrafted microphones in California. Inspired design and impeccable attention to detail will help you capture a gorgeous vintage sound without the vintage price tag. Check out their beautiful line of microphones at roswellproaudio.com. You may already know that using true analog gear is one of the best ways to create a great record. Yet increasingly, we live in a digital world, recording and mixing inside the computer. So what if you could have the best of both worlds? Tegeler Audio Manufaktur is bridging the analog-digital divide by creating high-end analog gear like the Schwerkraftmaschine compressor and the Raumzeitmaschine reverb, whose knobs you can control remotely using a plugin in your DAW. Or their many analog units like the Cream bus compressor with mastering EQ, or the Veritube recording channel that let you save your settings using a custom recall sheet plugin, offering a complete line of pro audio gear from compressors to EQs to reverbs and beyond. Now you can get a pro analog sound while benefiting from the power of digital. Let your DAW help you move your knobs so that your music can move you. Click the link in the show notes to learn more about Tegeler Audio Manufaktur. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Mac Gayden, a successful songwriter, producer, and guitar player. He's also considered a musician's musician for his intricate playing. He started playing guitar in Nashville as a teenager in the 1960s and quickly became a top session guitar player, playing on iconic records such as Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. Mac was also known for his unique slide guitar sound through a wah-wah pedal, made famous on JJ Cale's record Crazy Mama. And years later, in 2013, he was finally inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame as one of the original Nashville Cats. As a songwriter, Mac wrote Everlasting Love, covered by many great artists, including Carl Carlton, Robert Knight, U2, and Gloria Estefan. It has the distinction of being one of only 2 songs to ever have hit status every decade for the past 40 years. As a top session player, Mac helped found 2 critically acclaimed supergroups in the 1970s, Barefoot Jerry and Area Code 615, both of which recorded with Wayne Moss at his famous home studio Cinderella Sound in Madison, Tennessee, about 10 miles north of here. Mac has played on records with many great artists, including John Hyatt, Chris Christopherson, Leonard Cohen, Simon and Garfunkel, Loudon Wainwright, Rita Coolidge, and Robert Knight. He is an open book of Nashville music history. Please welcome Mac Gayden to Recording Studio Rockstars. Mac, are you ready to rock?
Oh, I am. Thanks, Liz.
My pleasure.
Thanks for that introduction.
You're welcome. And, you know, as I do with all of my guests, I have an opportunity to do some research and really learn more about them. And I've known you for a long time, but I really didn't know as much about you. And I'm looking forward to learning more just by having a conversation with you. I didn't know that you, I had forgotten that you were in Area Code 615 and Barefoot Jerry, and that, you know, you had this long history as a session guitar player.
Uh-huh.
So I love hearing all that stuff. Tell us a little bit more about how you got started out in all this. You know, give us, in your own words, an introduction to your arrival in Nashville and getting into this world.
I was born here, so I arrived when I was born. So I grew up in South Nashville off Franklin Road, and went to a private boys' school and high school down in Franklin, BGA, Battleground Academy. And they didn't allow music in the school, and I was playing on the basketball team. I remember when I was a junior, we had a really good team, but and a really good chemistry. But because I was playing rock and roll, they set me on the bench for 5 games, and we lost all 5 games. So I got back on the starting again, and I just continued.
So you literally got in trouble for doing rock and roll music?
Oh yeah, they just didn't like it at all. Rock and roll in those days was like of the devil.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would play at my friends' houses that I grew up with. They would have parties and stuff, and the parents would meet me at the front door and said, "All you musicians go through the back door and eat with the help." That's the kind of vibe it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got into playing music and started playing with some of the black doo-wop groups in town. And I saw them on the street, and I'd go sit in with them on the street, And,
nice. Busking.
Yeah. And so that's how it really all started. And
you'd take an acoustic guitar with you or something like that?
I would take an acoustic.
What kind? Would you take a dreadnought or an F-hole kind of thing?
A sovereign, not a sovereign, but what was it? Okay. Harmony?
A Harmony, yeah.
Yeah.
With an arch top, that kind of thing, just like banging out chords?
I think it was, I can't remember what it looked like. I haven't seen that particular guitar in a long time. But anyway, so I would play, and they would say, "Yeah, you play pretty cool." So I would go sit in with these little community center gigs with them for little dances and stuff. And I really got started that way, playing R&B. So anyway, so the transition over to country was later.
Yeah. Well, I know I don't want to jump ahead here, but the sort of the cultural crossover as a white guy playing guitar in the R&B scene and everything, it just reminds me. I went back and just rewatched the Muscle Shoals documentary, sort of preparing for this interview too. So Rockstars, the timing of this interview, of course, is immediately on the passing of Rick Hall.
Yeah, and I did sessions with him.
Yeah, and I know we want to talk about that too. But I guess where I'm going with this too is to ask you about that, crossing over between white and black culture at that time and playing music. I mean, did you, what was your background with your family that you wanted to be a bit of a rebel and play rock and roll and, cross the lines?
My dad was a doctor and my mother was a socialite.
A socialite, right on.
She would go to, fundraisers and junior league and all that kind of stuff and raise money for, causes. But we had 6 kids in my family, so my dad, even though he was a doctor, we weren't wealthy, So, it was,
you were not wealthy because there was a lot of mouths to feed.
Oh, that's right. So everybody had, to like play it down a little bit, even though we had to run around with friends who were wealthy. But anyway, so music was looked upon as being of the devil back then, as I said before.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother, who sang in church, finally one day she said, "You leave this boy alone, let him do what he's going to do." So on her piano, I wrote this melody when I was 5 years old, which turned out to be the counter melody to Everlasting Love.
Can you sing that melody for us right
now? Da, 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 da. That melody goes in the chorus.
Yeah.
Behind the regular melody was like, "Open up your eyes," then you realize, Yeah.
Well, so that's pretty amazing. So you did that at 5 and it just stuck with you? You just kind of had that in your back pocket for a long time?
I threw it on the session. I just threw it in.
Well, let's jump right into that story. So tell us about the session and about, taking a song that you had started when you were 5 years old, and how did you turn that into one of the biggest hit songs?
Well, Buzz Case and I wrote 9 or 10 songs for Robert Knight's first album. And that was really a B-side, or what they would call a throwaway tune or something in the can or something like that. And so the session was over. It was on a Friday night. We had all these musicians there. And Brent Mayer was his first session as an engineer, went on to engineer the Judds and produce them. But anyway, so his first session was Everlasting Love, and it was a big hit. But we had like 30 minutes left on the session. Everybody wanted to go home, and everybody will tell you, don't ever book a session on Friday night.
Right.
Because you'll get the worst performance by the musicians possible. Well, in those days, yeah.
Did people go home or were they just headed to gigs
Well, I
anyway?
just begged them to stay, and they stayed, and we 30 minutes on the song, and everybody knew it was special. We didn't know it was a hit. You never know if it's going to hit. That's up to the people. But we played it back, and everybody went, there's something to it. And so by the time we finished doing overdubs, and the musicians had already left, I overdubbed a Farfisa organ, playing that part I just hummed in the background, and Buzz Cason and his singer, Carol Montgomery, sang da da da. They sang it also along with the strings. But anyway, Kenny Buttrey played drums on that. It was Pig Robbins played piano, Nora Putnam played bass, and then we had a horn section. I can't remember who all was on that, but we just ran through it quickly. And
where were you guys recording this?
At Phillips' studio back then. It was Monument had bought the studio, so it was Monument legally, but it's Phillips' studio at that point. It was down across from the War Memorial Building. There's a big, tall building down there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it was over in there. It was a house.
So it wasn't on Music Row necessarily?
No, it wasn't. It was a house kind of thing. It was three or four.
Was it a home studio?
Kind of was, yeah. Sure, but a big one.
Yeah.
It's where Orbison cut all of his stuff, and Dolly Parton, all those people, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, did I read something about you? Am I remembering that right? Or was it, when I was reading up on you, I was reading also comments about Wayne and you and stuff like that. And maybe it was Wayne that had played the Pretty Woman guitar lick or something like that.
Yeah, he and 2 or 3 other guys played the same lick.
Okay, right.
Same lick on the same session.
That's the same studio.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So, one of the things I like to ask our guests, Mac, at the start of the interview is to share an inspirational quote, too. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I have got. Let's see, where's my... I always like to center in when I'm in the studio and repeat to myself, you're younger than this moment and older than forever.
Okay.
Came up with that in a lyric one time, so I always think about it.
You're younger than this moment and older than forever.
Right.
All right, so what does that mean to you?
Boundless. Focus on your body.
Yeah.
Be in your body.
Yeah. I remember when you and I worked together,
yeah.
It's just coming back to me now, but you had talked about how important physical health was to you and practicing yoga. And I think you had a story you shared once about the doctor opening you up for some procedure and saying that your insides looked like you were about 25 years old.
Yeah, that's true. I was on the operating table at Vanderbilt, and they were repairing a hernia. And they opened me up, and they had all these interns in there watching the procedure. There was about 8 of them. They were all, and they gave me an epidural, which is from the waist down, dead from the waist down.
Right, so you're still awake.
I'm still awake, wide awake.
That doesn't sound like much fun.
And I told them, I said, they said, well, how come your organs are so young and you're 47 years old or something like that? I said, because I meditate and yoga and stuff like that. They all laughed like, oh, come on, yeah.
I always got the impression when I moved to Nashville and met a bunch of other older musicians that music and a life in music can kind of keep you young.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, I know there are elements to a lifestyle in music that might help you age, but I mean, even watching Keith Richards in the Muscle Shoals documentary, I mean, due respect to Keith, I think he's lived a lifestyle that may have pushed the boundaries, and yet he still kind of seems like a youthful soul at this point.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. It's like a spiritual technique music is.
Yeah. I
mean, I can go like a week without playing, and I feel tremendous amount of stress in my body and in my head and everything else. And as soon as I pick up the guitar, start playing, it's over. It goes away, Yeah. I think playing music for me is as important as anything.
Yeah.
Anything I do.
What is your routine like? Well, if you don't mind my asking, Mac, how old are you now? And what is your routine with music like these days?
I'm 77. And my routine is basically I get up in the morning and I do what they call asanas, which are yoga postures. And I do that for 30 minutes, and then I meditate for an hour. I do the siddhis, which is an advanced TM technique, and focuses on the different natural laws of nature, levitation and stuff like that. Yeah.
Really? Have you ever levitated?
Oh yeah, I've levitated with a room full of about 5,000 people before.
Really?
It's the damnedest thing you've ever seen.
Now that's not you jumping in the air on stage with a guitar in your hand.
Well, it does look like jumping. It does. Because there's so much stress in the atmosphere out here on the planet, we can't float like we should. We should be able to float by now, but there's just too much stress. So we bounce like frogs sitting in the lotus position, legs crossed. If you see it, you go like, well, "Come on," you know. But if you get on the foam and try to do it yourself, it's impossible.
Interesting.
So it's like to see it is, but to do it is another thing. You know?
Well, I have to say I'm an advocate of impossible things. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have chosen to do a career in life and music myself anyway, to begin with. But I like to keep an open mind, and I'm always interested in new things. I've learned that there's a lot more that I don't know than there is that I know. Yeah. You know?
Well, what happens is when in the mind, the brain is, the neurons in the brain, when you lift off from the foam, all the neurons in the brain are firing simultaneously. They've done tests in these people that are hooked up to electrodes. Their whole brain is firing at the same time, all the neurons. So,
well, that's fascinating. Have you found a correlation between what goes on with that and what goes on in music?
Yes. There have been times when I walked up on stage and played, and it felt like 2 minutes went by, and it was like an hour and a half. So when that happens, and it does happen, the athletes talk about it too. So what do they call it? Michael Jordan called it in
the zone or something.
In the zone, yeah. Time goes by and it becomes less linear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And time becomes timeless. Yeah.
I guess I have a sense of that when I've trained for a marathon before. And, you know, spending hours running should feel a lot more insane than it does if I was in the zone with it.
Yeah.
You know? Although it's hard for me to equate my experience with Michael Jordan's.
Yeah. And the endorphins kick in too.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's see. How about, you know, I don't know if you've got one in mind, but another thing I like to ask about, you know, especially speaking to somebody with so much experience and so many successes, is if you maybe wouldn't mind sharing a story of a real failure for you in music or in the studio that kind of brings it all down to earth and reminds us that we might all experience the same things on that journey.
Yeah, I haven't written it down, but it just dawned on me. Something that happened to me. When I was reading your notes, I went like, wait a minute, I can't think of anything. Then I just thought of something really. It was traumatic in my career, and I didn't take it seriously at the time, but I didn't realize till a few years later how serious it was for my career. I had a record out as a solo artist after I left Barefoot Jerry. I had a song called Morning Glory, which is a slide guitar kind of thing and a kind of interesting lyric. And it was picked in all the trades as being a hit, And at that time, there was 3 different trades that people went by. It was picked in all 3. And so what happened was ABC out in California saw it from Nashville, so they put it in the country promo stack. They sent all the promo records on that record out to country stations. And so it never got off the ground. And they made a huge mistake. So they flew me out to L.A. to talk about the second album, and they just said, do some music that we can play for our friends at the country club, And I just thought, I'm gonna give them the most rebellious album I can, and I did, and they had to put it out. Yeah. So I was so mad because of what they had done to Morning Glory, and Morning Glory did stir up some noise in Europe and maybe in San Francisco and maybe New York.
What year was this?
Was that
or decade?
73, 74,
okay,
something like that.
And how would you describe Morning Glory? I mean, they described it as country, and that was incorrect, right?
Yeah, it was kind of R&B, white soul, and with a slide guitar lead all over it. And it was chosen by a contest they had at BBC they had a contest of all the Dwayne Allman, Roy Cooter, and all these different slide players, and they had people call in and vote on. It won number one in the vote.
Nice.
So that was a big feather in my hat. Yeah.
So Dwayne Allman, Leonard Skinner, those guys all recorded down in Muscle Shoals. You recorded in Muscle Shoals.
Yeah.
You're from the South. Do you consider yourself to be a real part of the kind of Southern rock genre?
I think I was in the middle of it, yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to, I knew the Allman Brothers when they were the Allman Joys, and they were playing downtown.
Really?
They were playing downtown at, I can't remember the name of that club, but I knew them way back then. And Dwayne and I used to play sessions together, and we would swap licks. He played in an E tuning and E open tuning, and I played in a G. We would just sit and swap licks, and they wouldn't let us play slide on the sessions.
Why is that?
Steel players didn't like it.
Right.
It pissed them off.
So let's talk about your slide style. I mean,
yeah.
You are known for playing slide through a wah-wah guitar, and that's really featured on JJ Cale, Crazy Mama.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that story. Maybe even start by introducing people to who is JJ Cale.
JJ Cale, who wrote Cocaine, After Midnight, Crazy Mama, maybe a few other songs that were hits, was a great friend of Clapton's, and he was from Tulsa, part of the Tulsa scene. And became very famous with his own guitar style, which kind of was like a lilting kind of jazz blues style, and kind of slowed down, a little bit at a time. He wasn't a real fast player.
Yeah,
he could, but he wouldn't.
On that record, you guys were playing with a lot of drum machines too, right?
And so he called me one day. He was doing some demos. This is when he first moved to town. No one even knew who he was. And he got me over to the studio, and he said, I walked in and I heard this thing. It sounded like a bass drum and a snare hitting at the same time. I couldn't tell which was which. And he said, this is a drum machine. I think I'm one of the first ones around here that has one. So he said, would you like to play on this Jimmy Reed kind of tune? Jimmy Reed is kind of dun, 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 that kind of feel. Anyway, so he calls me a few months later, and I go out to Bradley's barn. And I'm sick. I have a fever of 103. And I told him, I said, I'm good for one take.
Nice.
And they said, okay. They turned the machine on, and I said, okay, I could do one more. They said, we got it. They got it on the first take.
That's great.
Yeah.
And this is recording a tape back in the day.
Yeah.
Tell us about Bradley's barn.
Bradley's barn was just a big barn converted into a studio.
Owen Bradley?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Owen Bradley.
And where was that?
That was out off, Hickory Lake, or
up north of Nashville or something like that?
Or Percy Priest Lake.
Percy Priest out east.
I'm not sure which one lake it was. Yeah. I think it was out in Hendersonville, maybe.
Okay, all right.
I'm not sure. I can't remember now. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And but anyway, it was what a history that had. Patsy Cline and Brenda Lee and all those people. Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about being a session player in Nashville. I mean, you were a teenager playing guitar. At what age did you begin to play sessions as a teenager?
I started playing sessions about 19 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
And what I did was there was a studio downtown called Globe Studio. And it was run by this guy who would advertise in different music magazines all over the United States. That he would demo your song for X amount of dollars. You just send in whatever style you wanted the song to be done in.
Nashville's been like that for a long time, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So anyway, and we got paid on how many songs we did a day. Sometimes we do 30, sometimes 20. And we got like $10, $15 per song. So anyway, I started playing those. We did all kinds of music, everything you can imagine, jazz, folk, country, R&B, and whatever else fell in between the lines.
And you're working quickly on the song.
Oh, and we had endings 1 through 5 and beginnings, intros 1 through 5. So we memorized the endings and beginnings.
Really? So somebody just calls it, let's do a 3?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'd speed everything up. It sped it up that way. So anyway, I would play bass sometimes.
Yeah.
And guitar a lot. And And so that's how I really got started.
Now, were you guys writing charts? Was this part of
Yes, we were.
the process as
So
well?
we were writing new letter charts.
Right. You wouldn't use numbers. You'd write the letter of the chord.
It wasn't here yet.
Yeah. It wasn't there yet. When did the number system arrive?
Charlie McCoy brought it here.
Who did?
Charlie McCoy.
Oh, yeah. He was playing harmonica with you in area code 615.
Yeah, he
right?
was, yeah. And Charlie brought it. Just a second, I'm going to drink.
All right. Yeah, so I discovered area code 615 right about when I built this studio, actually.
Yeah.
I had been watching a movie called Heart-Worn Highways. And they took us through Nashville in this documentary and took us to I forgot which studios it was, but they showed footage from Cinderella, and that was the first I ever heard of Barefoot Jerry and area code 615, and we were flipping out. We were like, what is that? That's cool, you know? And then I found Wayne later, and there's what is the one song off there? Is it Fox Chase? Or
Fox Chase.
Fox Chase.
It was in a movie, right?
And it's got this breakdown in there, which is the greatest hip hop drum breakdown I've ever heard. You know? Right in the middle is like a little breakdown spot. But anyway, so I got really excited about it before I even knew that, you know, you were, and I'd already worked with you at that point.
I just never talked about it much because it's sad to be a part of such a great group and it fall apart because everybody was making too much money in the studio.
And they didn't want to, so there was no reason to keep working on a labor of love at that point.
That's right. We were out in Fillmore West with Garcia and the Grateful Dead on the front row. Yeah. Playing for them. And the guys in the group didn't know who they were. I was the only one that kind of knew who they were. Really? But so they all did the Fillmore thing and came home and said, I don't want to do that anymore. Really? And so we started Barefoot Jerry.
And that's how Barefoot Jerry started.
Yeah, that's how Barefoot Jerry started, yeah.
So there's another thing that I noticed when I was going and listening to area code 615 again, and somebody else even described it as like a meeting of country and Southern rock. You know, this you guys were kind of bridging between the two. Yeah. You know, high octane bluegrass music in a way, electrified. But it also reminded me a bit of the Dixie Dregs. And that
they got their influence from Barefoot Jerry. Yeah. I mean, from 615. They told me that. Yeah. Yeah. The keyboard player, what's his name? I can't think of his name, from the Dixie Dregs. He said, we drew from, and also the Bluegrass, Newgrass Revival. Yeah. Did the same thing.
Interesting. Well, very cool. All right, so let's see. We'll back up. You're playing sessions. You guys are doing a lot of songs a day. The Nashville number charts was brought here by Charlie McCoy. That's cool. That's the first I'd heard of that too.
He's the first one I knew about. I think he said he did, but someone said that maybe Bill Purcell did too. Okay. You know who Bill Purcell was?
No, tell us about Bill Purcell.
He's a keyboard player and an arranger. Between he and Charlie, and they were good friends, the number system flourished here. It took off. Yeah.
And then Buddy Spiker, I remember right? The violinist, fiddle player. Yeah. So he had a fiddle shop here in East Nashville where I used to take my fiddle down and go do learn old time songs.
Oh, really?
And I could hear him. I think he divided the house up by just hanging a curtain between the shop and the back of the house where he was living or something. Yeah. And I could hear him working up bizarre stuff in the back room, like really genius, harmony parts and things like that. Yeah. It's interesting. But, he does some on the videos. I put together a playlist on YouTube of videos of your work and Barefoot Jerry and area code 615. So Rockstars, you can find that if you just go into the show notes and click the link. You can go listen to some of this music. But you'll see some amazing live performances of you guys up on stage doing just cool stuff, fast playing and real intricate, fun parts. Yeah. So you took some of the better session musicians and decided to put area code 615 together. How did that come together?
I think Kenny Buttrey and Elliot Mazer, he's a producer. He produced Neil Young and a few others, and Linda Ronstadt. We were all doing the Linda Ronstadt album, I think. He and Kenny came up with the idea, let's throw these guys together.
Was that Silk Purse? Yeah. Up with Wayne at Cinderella? Yeah. It's a great sounding record, too.
And we introduced Linda to Smokey Robinson.
Okay.
Between takes, we would go, ooh, baby, baby. And she said, who did that song? And we told her, and she cut it and had a huge hit.
That's great, man.
And then we did Heat Wave, and she cut that. And then, I don't know, Tears of a Clown or something, but she did several of them.
Really? Tears of a Clown. Wow.
Just from that one session. She listened to what we were doing and gleaned it,
That's great.
Yeah.
What a cool story. Tell us a little bit about Cinderella Sound. Talk about that studio up there. What was it like then? What's it like now? How would you describe it?
It's kind of like playing in your garage, because that's what it is. Yeah. And this is a garage.
This was a garage. Yeah.
They make the best.
The only thing I park now is, hopefully a good mix.
They make the best studios.
It really does.
Yeah. I've played in a lot of garages. Anyway, it's like, he had shelves all around with all his guitars. You've seen that. You've been in
I think so. Yeah. It's been a while. I've only
Yeah.
been there maybe once or twice years ago.
It's fun. We used to have one of the singing booths in the bathroom,
I'm trying to get Wayne to come join us on the podcast too, so I may need your help for that, Mac.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell him.
All right. Tell him what's up.
I'll tell him. I'm getting ready to see him maybe in a few days. But it's just like the first studio that was a garage that I ever played in, that was real laid back, no pretension. We were all in the union back in those days, so everything had to be by union rules. I think when we were out in Cinderella that we were off the clock.
Okay. Cinderella was I guess Nashville was, a lot of the studios were home studios initially. Wasn't all of Music Row just home studios?
There were a lot, yeah. Yeah, there were a lot. But a lot of times you couldn't get off the clock. If you had a musician in the group that was like real strict, it was hard,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean get off the clock as far as like ending your session? You could play into the
night, just play instead of 3-hour session, it was an all-day session, an all-night session, yeah.
Which was a lot more fun?
Yeah. It's kind of like what they were doing in Muscle Shoals, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so why don't you take us to Muscle Shoals? Oh, actually, before we go, I wanted to ask you if you're familiar with this. So one of the things that's really remarkable about Cinderella is they have a Flickinger mixing console there.
Oh, yeah.
Which is this amazing sounding board. And
yeah, it is.
it has I've used another one. I've used Sly Stone's old Flickinger, which is at a Key Club recording, Bill Skibby's studio in Benton Harbor, Michigan. And this particular console has this crunchy rock and roll quality to it that makes the drums sound super cool. And, a lot of those older recordings all seem to have that. I almost feel like that got lost as technology tried to get smarter and records got cleaner sounding and things like that. But there was something really cool to like Muscle Shoals recordings to Cinderella's recordings where you have this power because of almost like the limitations of the equipment cause you to push up against it.
Well, I have a 46-minute jam that we formed Barefoot Jerry out of after that jam. It's nonstop. And it's just Wayne, Kenny, John Harris, and I playing.
Yeah.
And it's just, you have to like have a really good sense of humor or get stoned to listen to it.
Is it somewhere that we can find it, or is it in your personal collection?
I'll give you a copy, but you have to guard it with your life because it's never been.
This one's not going up on YouTube or anything like that.
No, it's not been released.
All right.
It's in the can, and we're talking about how we're going to get it out. Because the minute we put it out, it's over. Somebody's going to, 46 minutes, is going to copy the whole thing, and they'll bootleg that crap out of it. Go ahead.
Well, so tell us about going down to Muscle Shoals.
I went down, they needed a guitar player. The guitar player that was playing down there, I can't remember his name. He was playing with Norbert Putnam and David Briggs and Jerry Kerrigan. He was the guitar player. He had a drinking problem and he was sick and having a hard time, so he had to go in the hospital or something. They called me and asked me to come down and play some sessions, and I went down there and met Rick and I showed him this technique that I came up with. Later, ZZ Top went to the bank with it, where you pick with your finger and the fingers and the pick all at the same time and get a chime when you play the note. Ding, you heard that?
I think so, yeah. You mean, where you get like the high overtone too?
Yeah.
It's like a pinched sound.
I was the first one I ever saw do it.
Really? That was big in the 80s in hair metal bands, right?
Rick said, I've never seen anybody do that. And I said, well, I haven't either. And anyway, so a few years later, ZZ Top was doing it. So, but I'm not going to say I'm the only one that ever did it, but I'm the only one I ever saw did it.
Yeah, well, in all of our worlds, we notice when it's the first time we see something, whether we do it or somebody else.
So I meant to go see Rick before he died. I didn't know he was going to die, but I meant to get him to say I was the first one he saw do that.
Too bad you didn't get Rick to give you that testimonial before he's...
Yeah, but anyway, the thing I learned is they worked on one song for 15 hours, and my fingers were bleeding.
Down at Muscle Shoals, you guys spent that much time on one song?
Yeah, one song. And Rick would go away and go play pool, and he would have the engineer call him when the band started sounding good. But we did one song, and I think it took 12 to 15 hours somewhere. Yeah. Because you're not playing the whole time. Talking some. But anyway, I came back to Nashville, and I said, you guys got it wrong. They said, what do you mean? Y'all are doing 4 songs in a 3-hour session, and you're rushing through it, and you're not putting your soul into it. And I said, in Muscle Shoals, they've got so many songs on the charts, and look at us,
Right, and the way they were approaching it was to make each song special until it was a hit, right? That was sort of Rick's MO.
Just to really milk it,
Yeah, he talked about that in the Muscle Shoals documentary. He talked about that when you get a chance, when you get a shot, you get one shot.
Yeah.
And so that very first shot, of recording a song and submitting it, it better be a hit, because if it's not a hit, you're done.
That's right.
Sort of his attitude towards it.
That's right, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I guess there was a big difference for you between recording a whole bunch of songs each day when people just sort of hired you for those demos, and maybe it's no surprise that they didn't become the hits, but something that you guys really poured your heart and soul into did become a hit.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And the thing that I noticed is when I'd go from one session to the other, I was starting to play the same lick on the last session I played on the next session I went, come on, It's only because you're running out of ideas, and they don't give you time to come up with the ideas because you're rushing through it.
Yeah. So you had 5 intros and 5 outros.
Yeah. Well, that was before all this stuff.
Yeah.
That was way back in the, we didn't have that later on. Over on 16th Avenue, they didn't do that. They were more original. But the thing is I just got people to slow down a little bit, and then it got to where I couldn't tolerate the tension on the session scene and I started Barefoot Jerry. And that was to just get out of here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Barefoot Jerry was a switch for you from session, high tension session guitar playing to I'm going to do my own thing.
You want to smoke some weed.
All right. And tell us about the kind of story arc of Barefoot Jerry. How did that go career wise and all that?
The Barefoot Jerry thing was, Kenny didn't want to do sessions. I mean, didn't want to play live gigs either, because he was making $250,000 a year,
Wow.
So
doing
back then it was like $500,000 a year,
Yeah, really.
But so he just couldn't do it. So that's why I quit the group and went out on my own. So Barefoot Jerry for me lasted 1 album. Then I went on my own because Kenny was no longer there.
And you weren't tempted to stick it out with the 250,000 session playing gigs because it was just the lifestyle and the stress was just not worth it?
I wasn't doing that. I wasn't making that much.
You just weren't making that much.
I was making maybe a third of that, And Kenny was just playing so many sessions, But I was doing as much work as I could take in,
Yeah.
It's a little harder to come up with ideas on a guitar than it is drums, because the drums are pretty much, they are what they are. And
right.
Guitar.
If you got a good pocket, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. All right. Well, so let me ask you some other questions about some of the records you were on. You tell us the story of working with Bob Dylan on Blonde on Blonde.
Played on 4 or 5 tunes. They only have record of me playing on one. And we're working on it now. The union's going through the old records right now, trying to give me some legitimate idea of which other songs I played on. They have the fact that strictly Sweet Marie or whatever. Yeah. I'm definitely on that one. They have record of that.
Yeah.
But the other...
I understand it. Sometimes it's just hard to remember what you did in the studio. I have trouble remembering what I did on different things.
Oh, yeah. Well, what they did back then, I got left off 3 or 4 albums, but that happens all the time, yeah. some secretary just let it fall through the cracks.
Right.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm going to confess this publicly right now and apologize once again to my very good friend, James Haggerty, Hags, here in Nashville.
Yeah.
As a producer, I overlooked one credit on a record where I had a number of different musicians playing, and he had played a great bass part on one of the songs for Roscoe Gordon for a record I produced. And I just didn't see it when we were proofing the credits. I just didn't notice that I had accidentally left him off. So
well, that happens.
Hags, public apology to you right now, right here. Anybody, you're welcome to send me hate email to put me in my place, but I screwed up myself too.
Yeah, and I played on, several of us played on Bridge Over Troubled Waters.
Yeah, tell us about that session. Was that down at Muscle Shoals?
No, that was done Studio A in Columbia here.
Okay, all right.
And
the big one that became Javelina. Oh no, that's Studio A. The big one is Javelina, and then Ben's Place.
The concert hut was B.
That was B. Okay.
Yeah, concert hut was B, and A was the other studio. Curb, I think, has their sound.
Okay, I might be mixing up my studios then.
But anyway, we were playing on that whole album with I Am a Rock and all those songs, and Paul Simon just started screaming at Garfunkel all of a sudden and just lost it there for a few days and then just left town.
Really?
Yeah, and so we didn't get credit, even though we played on the album.
You were on the record, but because they had an internal fight.
Because he had a bad memory of Nashville, so it was anti-Semitic, and we didn't even know that was going on. It just happened, yeah.
Really?
Just that we went like, what is going on, yeah?
You didn't know that they had the fight and walked off, or you didn't know that there was sort of an anti-Semitic thing going on?
There wasn't, but that's
he picked up on it.
He was being paranoid for some reason. You know, we didn't know any of that was going on, and all of a sudden it said he's going back to New York to finish the album. Yeah. So Kenny got real pissed off because he said he played drums on Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and somebody else got credit for it. Yeah. So,
well, at least there was some credit. You know, these days,
yeah,
we just kind of give up on that for the most part, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
But there's new stuff coming that I think is really fascinating. So I won't go off on too much of a tangent.
Yeah.
But there are new technologies that are arriving right now called blockchain and hashing algorithms, and these companies that are trying to create digital file formats that will embed lots of information. Gabri Waddell was on the show too, and he has a plugin called the RIN-M plugin.
It'll keep people from copying?
No, it's not that, but this is a plugin you put in Pro Tools, and while you're working on a song, you put in all the information about everybody's credits, and then it follows the song until its completion, and you can send it off to mastering along with the mixes.
Oh, fantastic.
And it will deliver all the rights and, who played what and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, fantastic. Credits. Now, if we can just get something to block duplication,
I don't know if that's ever coming or not. Yeah. I'm not so sure if that's coming, but I think that what might come is that there will be systems in place. There's something that I'm following now called .blockchain music, and systems where you have a file format that embeds all this metadata about the song.
Yeah.
And people will be more incentivized to use the good file for everything than to try and use the copied file for everything. I mean, in the end, if a kid wants to just make a tape of a song and go listen to it, there's nothing we're ever going to do about that. But I think that was happening plenty before the digital age came along, and now the digital age is here, and we hadn't really figured out how to make that quite work yet. But that's another topic, right?
Well, it's a mess. It saddens me a little bit because all these younger musicians coming into the system, songwriters and artists, are just going to have such a difficult time.
Yeah, I know. Well, so
it was so much easier when I was coming through the system. It was so much easier.
Yeah. I feel like I showed up right in the middle.
Yeah, you did.
I showed up right when the old thing was ending, and the new thing wasn't quite figured out yet.
Yeah.
But I'll be happy to hand it off to the next generation of musicians. Good. I'd like to see a generation of music creators, songwriters, musicians, producers, engineers, everybody who's involved in creating this stuff, and it becomes easy and minimal effort to sort of be included along for the ride of whatever your creations are. I'd like to see a world where you create something and maybe you're not famous with something you did, but the accumulation of all the little creations you did over time actually get tracked, and you earn tiny bits of income from everywhere.
Yeah.
End up amounting to a real living for people. I think that'll be important stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you another question. You told us about JJ Cale and Cinderella and Everlasting Love and Muscle Shoals. Man, we're moving so quickly. I'm running out of things. Let's talk about recording guitar, Mac. What did it used to be like to play and record a guitar on a session, and what's it like now? How has it changed the way that you record a guitar?
I haven't changed a thing.
All right, well, tell us how you record a guitar.
I just plug in, and if I'm using a wah pedal, I use a wah pedal. I put a compressor in the front end, and it gives it a little bit more body, But as far as I haven't changed anything since the old days.
How about from the engineering side of things, the recording side, to the extent that you feel comfortable answering those questions? How would you have put a mic on a guitar back in the day? How do you do it now? I
didn't care what mics they put on there. What I would do is listen to the playback and figure out what I needed to do from my end to make it sound the way I wanted it to. So I would modify the mic sound, because a lot of times the engineers would use what they wanted to use. I always trusted the engineers, I never gave them any shit or gave them any hard time.
Did you have any favorite engineers?
No, I liked them all. Because, by the time you get to engineer the big time in Nashville, you got to be a sister, brother, mother, uncle. You got to be able to psychologically lock into the musicians. You got to be a good guy, a nice person, And that's a must,
Yeah.
There were a couple of people hard to kind of deal with. Tom Dowd was the hardest ever.
Oh, you work with Tom? Tell us about working with Tom.
I worked with Tom Dowd. I didn't know who he was. And I was coming back from Miami. I'd been down there at Criteria cutting part of my album, and I stopped off.
We got to talk about that.
Stopped off at making it what's the label at
Macon, Georgia?
Yeah, in Macon. What's the label?
I don't know which
that Allman Brothers run.
I'm a terrible historian.
Anyway, what was the studio? Anyway, he was engineer.
It wasn't Fame. It wasn't
Fame. Yeah. It was Macon. And so anyway, I heard this voice in there, and he was bossing me around, telling me what to do on the guitar, and being really hard on me, and I didn't know who he was until years later, I saw this documentary they'd done on Tom Dowd. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And I was riding in a van back from a gig, and they had put it on, and I went, God, it was Tom Dowd. He was giving me a hard time, I think he cut Layla, didn't he cut?
He cut Layla, Derek and the Dominoes.
Yeah, same studio.
He spent a lot of time at Criteria Studios, and so your left elbow, Mac, is leaning on my console, which is a custom-built MCI that Jeep built for Criteria Studio C.
Oh, right.
So that's the same board that was in Studio C all through the 1970s at Criteria and recorded Hotel California for the Eagles.
Oh, really?
And the Bee Gees hits, Staying Alive, Saturday Night Fever. Eric Clapton, 461 Ocean Boulevard was done on that as well.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I was there.
So maybe you were in Studio C. Do you remember which studio you would have been in at Criteria?
They pushed us around all over the place because it was the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and the other studios, and they would always preempt us and make us.
At the same time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this is in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So there you were. Yeah, you may have worked on this very board.
I could have, yeah. And but I don't remember.
What was the session? What'd you go down to Criteria for?
I cut my album, Hymn to the Seeker.
Oh, okay, all right.
Which is and mixed it out in L.A. at ABC's studio.
Okay, cool.
But Randy Meisner came over to see us one time during those sessions, and Glenn Fry was beating him up, and he was even bruised. He came over and said something to us, and we said, "Come on, stay with us for about 3 or 4 days out in the woods." And he did, and he said, "What should I do? I own a big ranch in Montana or somewhere, and I have $1 million in the bank." He said, "What should I do?" I said, "Quit the band." He quit, and he had 2 or 3 hits on his own.
Wait, that was Glenn Fry?
That was Randy Meisner.
Oh, Randy Meisner, sorry.
Yeah, and he's since then been back several times.
Okay, all right. Wow.
He was the high, take it to the limit,
Okay,
take
all right.
it to the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
But that is a funny story. And another story, you may not be able to put this on a podcast.
It's going on. Tell it. It's going on the air.
one morning we walked in, and my daughter, Oshina, who you know, was a baby. And she was in my arms, and Fleetwood Mac had just found out that morning that they had gone I told you the story, didn't I?
Tell it again. Tell it again. It's a great
that they
story.
had gone platinum, and the album hadn't been finished. And so I walked in, and Stevie Nicks is snorting coke off the coffee table in the front lounge, and she's got coke on her nose dripping off, and she said, "Let me hold a baby."
Oh man!
So
what a trip.
Unfortunately, I did give her Oshina. She held her for a minute. She said, "I hope she grows up to be a rocker."
And that might have helped influence right there. What a
But
trip.
she said, "I hope she'll grow up to be a rocker." I remember she said it kind of with a northern accent, rocker.
That's great. What a trip. What a wild story.
But
love hearing stories.
So
like
we
that.
were treated like no one knew who we were, and we were from Nashville, and they just kind of treated us. They came in and took our gear. We were right in the middle of a song. They'd come in and take our gear. Back then, the harmonizer was real popular.
Yeah, the Eventide 910.
Yeah, and they would come and get all that stuff and take it out of there for a while. And
what would you use the harmonizer for? Do you know?
I can't remember. I used it on guitar a few times, actually.
Let me ask you some questions about songwriting.
Okay.
So you've written a number of songs. You've had some great successes with songs. What advice would you have for songwriters? How does somebody begin to write songs? If somebody feels like they really want to write songs, but they don't feel confident about it yet, what advice do you have?
The best advice about songwriting is you got to, when it's in seed form, it can be real innocent and meaningless almost, Put it down, let it kind of germinate, and it'll grow into something. What I do is usually I let songs grow into something, a metamorphosis, and that works every time. Even if I come up with a lame idea, I put it down.
Yeah.
And it'll turn into something beautiful, like, what do you call it? Kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Turns into something incredible out of a seed form. So that's what I always go by that.
I love that. What a great quote. Yeah. Even if it's a lame idea, put it down.
Put it down.
Because I agree with you. I've heard stuff, or I've had an idea and I've recorded the sketch. I try to always just like capture sketches on my iPhone or whatever. Yeah. And my brain in that moment is telling me that's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
What a dumb lyric. You don't sound very good singing.
Yeah.
And then I might come back and listen and I might agree. But sometimes I listen, I'm like, wait a minute, that's pretty cool. You hear it out of context.
Yeah.
And sometimes I listen to other people's music and I try and imagine if I was singing that, and I realize that a lot of great writers have the ability to shape something that's really simple and something that's really almost like removed, like it's universal.
Yeah.
But if I tried to do that, I might not be willing to own that as an idea of my own. And I think that's a hurdle for me, it's just like accepting that it's like, just go for it.
Accept that it's going to grow into something you don't know yet.
Yeah.
I know a friend of mine came in on a Sunday morning, and he came into my house and said, "I just heard the DJ on WVOL, which is the black station, say, you put a hole in my soul. This song will put a hole in your soul." I said, "You get 25%. He said, "What do you mean?" "I'll give you 25%. I'm going to write it." And by the end of the day, I'd written "She Shot a Hole in My Soul." And when I first thought of hole in my soul, but I just changed it around. "She Shot a Hole in My Soul," and it was an R&B hit.
All right, that's great. That was with
Clifford Curry.
Yeah, Clifford Curry. Yeah. I remember hearing that one on YouTube too. I think I put that in the YouTube links as well. Well, that's cool. All right, now how about? Do you have a process for? You put the germ of an idea down, a seed down. Do you have a process to come back and revisit it and, pour a little water on it and let it grow a little bit?
I do it all the time. I may have 15 ideas going at the same time. Like I may have 15 books in the room that I'm reading. It may take all year to read them all. And I do the same thing with songwriting. Just here or there, go back and review it.
Yeah.
See what happens. So, I also something I do. I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I'll have a bridge in a song that's not working. I'll go back and review all the songs that I've got that aren't finished, that have bridges that are cool, and I'll take them out of my own material, plagiarize.
Okay, so you've got I'll say it again. So you're stealing bridges from old songs?
Yeah, that I haven't finished.
Okay, all right. Oh, I see.
They weren't working. Something wasn't working.
Yeah.
So since it's not working, I'm taking that bridge. I do that all the time.
Take it back.
Yeah.
Do you find it's a lot easier to make the music work than it is to make the lyrics and the melody work?
It's both. Yeah. It depends, I think for me, the lyrics take longer to distill.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's inspiring. And I guess one last question about writing. Have you in your life seen yourself write prolifically and then sometimes seen the flame die down a little bit on your writing? And how do you handle that? How do you know that you're writing enough and that you've got enough books written?
I've never had writer's block.
Never had writer's block. All right.
Never had it.
You just
when I was writing my autobiography, I had to make myself stop, because so much stuff coming all the time.
Yeah.
I've never had that problem. So when people talk about, I've heard guys say, I got to go get my heart broken because I need to write a song. I actually saw people do that. They would go fall in love with some girl that they knew they couldn't keep just so they'd experience. I saw Chris Christopherson do this.
Really?
Because I lived in a duplex with him before he became famous. And he kind of would fall in love with, you may not put this on the thing. He would kind of
the wrong. Well, we're live now, so maybe don't tell it if you don't want it to go on.
He was still married, but I've seen people fall in love with women or guys that they couldn't keep.
Right, right.
Knowing it was going to be some residual damage, but maybe a hit song.
All right. Well, hey, I think it's time for us to take a break, and then we'll come back in for the jam session. Rockstars, you can find links to what we're talking about, the YouTube clips, and listen to the music. Just click through on the show notes, whether you're on your mobile device or listening on your laptop. And we'll see you in just a moment for the jam session. Cheers. Roswell Pro Audio brings you microphone design that is out of this world. Endorsed by a growing list of artists and producers like Phil Collen of Def Leppard, Ross Hogarth, who's recorded Van Halen, Ziggy Marley, and the Doobie Brothers, and Super Dupes, working with Drake, Mary J. Blige, and Eminem. These are all rock stars that have discovered just how great Roswell microphones sound. Check out the Mini K47, which uses a capsule modeled on the one in the vintage U47 at a street price of only $299, or the beautiful Delphos condenser microphone with a capsule tuned like the vintage U67 with great clarity and far lower noise at a street price of only $899. In fact, you are hearing my voice right now on the beautiful Delphos microphone. These mics are carefully crafted by hand and immediately feel good even before you plug them in and hear how great they sound. These are well-built microphones that will last you and your studio a lifetime of great recording. Check out more audio examples of these awesome mics at roswellproaudio.com. Okay, hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Mac Gayden, and we're going to jump right in. Mac, are you ready to jam?
I'm ready to do it. Let's get down.
All right, groovy man, let's get down. Hey, one of the things I didn't ask you before we took the break that I did want to ask you is what do you see today in new music that really inspires you? Where are you seeing the innovation in music that turns you on?
There's one thing I see that I wish I didn't see, and I'll say, whoa, WHOA is a lyric that everybody uses when they run out of things to say.
Is that, are you talking about like these big choruses?
Whoa!
The stomp, like the stomp acoustic choruses that we hear now on the radio, wherever there's like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, my wife and I, when we hear a song on the radio that does that, we just laugh. They ran out of the lyric.
I think I need to write one of those choruses to get it off my chest too.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I've heard too many of it. And then maybe you can comment on this, but I feel like a sure sign that something might be, I don't know if it's forgettable later or maybe if it's a hit, I don't know, is when you start hearing it get used as like a default jingle in all the commercials.
Oh, yeah.
Like certain styles and like the whoa chorus or like the ukulele.
Yeah.
Like little chimey bells and a ukulele is like, that's like the default jingle for.
By the time it gets to commercials, boy, it's been running the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so when you started out in recording, Mac, what was one of the things that was holding you back?
When I first started, I'm trying to think. What was holding me back, I didn't have a lot of technique as a guitar player. I was self-taught. I never took a lesson. And it held me back a little bit because I was just not that quick as a player.
Yeah.
But so I started trying to speed up. And one day I was 13 years old. And one day my brother was booking this band called the Jets here in town, a black band. And I went to hear their sound check, and I picked the guitar player's guitar up when he was on the break. I said, "Can I play it?" And he said, "Yeah." And I started trying to play jazz. And he walks over to me, and this is a true story. He says, "Quit trying to play like a white boy and play from your heart."
Interesting.
And it really messed with my head.
Yeah.
For several years, until I picked up the slide guitar, and then I thought, I got some breathing room now. And then I had another musician from India. So it's the silence between the notes is where God lives.
That's good advice.
Yeah. So then I started slowing down, and then just taking things a little bit at a time. But it was a struggle for me there in the beginning.
Well, I think the first thing we do is we learn how to make some sounds.
Yeah.
And then later we learn how to stop making some sounds.
Yeah.
That becomes a powerful thing.
How
about, so the next question was going to be share some of the best advice you received. Obviously, both of those were really good bits of advice.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share? Any other inspirations for you or mentors that gave you great advice?
I would just say pay attention to everyone when you're in the studio, every musician, producer, artist, and engineer, because they always have something to say, and respect their space. But never use the studio as a confrontational. You never use it as a place for a confrontation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you ever seen any? Well, you described kind of a blow up on the Simon and Garfunkel session, but had you seen people kind of really lose it in the studio?
Oh yeah, back in the old days, I say old days when we were cutting, a whole lot of sessions and takes, a whole lot of takes. I was on a session one time, and this guy came into the session from another session. He said, I was on a Everly Brothers session, and they're on the 93rd take, and people were screaming and throwing stuff at each other. And I remember that clearly.
So would that have been the Everly Brothers singing for the 93rd time, or would that have been the band playing it again for
Probably
the 93rd
both.
time?
Combination of both.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. I've done, so a couple of thoughts. One is we live in an age with Pro Tools and these digital things where people just do a million takes and keep everything and comp it together. I've done vocal sessions where I've had to comp from 150 vocal takes before, and I don't ever want to do it again. And
Oh my God.
The part of me that is a problem solver figured out a way to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it created something that was a really good idea in the end.
Yeah.
But it's always remarkable for me to hear stories of the era of recording that you started out in, how that creative burden, that creative challenge of overdoing it has always been there.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes people just did 93 takes
Yeah.
to try and get something right. They just couldn't keep all 93 takes.
That's why I quit engineering, because I was a perfectionist. And I noticed that, songs were sounding sterile and too perfect. So now a lot of times I put mistakes in or leave them in on purpose, or things that are semi-mistakes,
Yeah.
that maybe slide by the listener, but I know they're there,
There was a quote I remember hearing, maybe it's from Dizzy Gillespie or somebody like that, who said, like, if it ain't got your mistakes, it ain't none of you.
Yeah. That's good.
Which I like, and I've gone through versions of music with mistakes and music where things have tried to be overly perfect.
Yeah.
And it seems like neither direction all the way is the right place.
In the
It seems
middle.
like it's somewhere in the middle, right?
That's right. That's right.
Moderation, even in even moderation and moderation, right?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's,
Well, so, that, and for me, that's something that I like to approach sessions with now too. I would rather record, 5 songs in a week, one song every day, start to finish, than spend all 5 days recording one song.
yeah, that's right.
I'd rather record 10 songs in a weekend and then just keep the good ones and let the other ones go.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good correlation to songwriting too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever written great songs when you decided that each song that you wrote had to be perfect?
Oh yeah. yeah. I think everybody's done that.
Well, talk a little bit about co-writing in Nashville. Has that been part of your process? Have you gone through the whole co-writing thing?
I'm not much of a co-writer in the sense that I've written a lot of songs where I did all the work and shared it with people, and then they got as much money, same amount of royalties as I did.
Right, without doing so much.
Without doing anything. Sometimes.
Well, that might be because when they walked in and said the title, you gave them 25% right off the bat.
Yeah, but that one was a friend, and it was understood. But I have written songs where I did most of the work and worked hard on it and didn't share in the same amount of royalties that I should have, I guess. And everybody has done that. I mean, I've heard of songs that people wrote, got credit for where they didn't do anything. They were just in the room,
Yeah.
And so there's something strange about that a little bit, karmically,
How about sharing a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something that the rock stars, which is how I refer to our listeners, could use on their next session this afternoon or today? I don't know what time you're listening, so I shouldn't say this afternoon. Just any kind of studio tip or a recording production tip that is kind of fun that you might want to tell people about.
Yeah, I would the main thing I've got written in my notes is pay attention. Yeah, because a lot of times we get caught in our own thoughts and we're not paying attention to what's going on around us, and it could be something incredible, And, when I was living in the duplex with Chris Christopherson, he was writing me and Bobby McGee in the attic upstairs at night.
Oh, yeah?
And I didn't pay any attention. I was not paying attention, and the next thing, a few weeks later, it was a hit.
Wow.
So those kinds of things will happen. And so pay attention, because a lot of greatness, beautiful, creative things happen around you all the time.
So talk a little bit about that, your daily routine back then.
Yeah.
You guys were roommates. How old were you?
My family was living on one side and his on the other. I was 26, 20. I was just out. We were in the Army together. Chris and I were.
So now were you married with
Oshina
at this point?
I had 2 kids. No,
okay.
Oshina's brother and older sister.
Okay, all right. And Chris is your roommate, or he's other half of a duplex.
Right, other half of a duplex.
And you guys are writing songs each day and then going down to a publishing house to go turn them in and something like that?
And I wrote Everlasting Love while we were living there, and he wrote me and Bobby McGee and Sunday Morning Coming Down, and maybe helped me make it through the nights.
All right, well, let me ask you this. How did you guys keep each other inspired? What was the routine that fueled each other's writing and made you guys all into great writers?
He didn't understand what I was doing because I was doing R&B. And I didn't understand what he was doing because he could only play 2 chords. and the third chord, he would go, and he goes, supposed to go. So I wasn't swapping notes with him or anything like that. I thought, he really wants to be a writer, and I wonder how long it's going to take for him to get past his singing, I was being negative,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't paying attention.
You weren't paying attention.
Yeah. I was paying attention to me and my thing, but I wasn't paying attention to him. And he could have, shared the song with me, or we could have co-written it. Who knows,
Right.
Yeah, who knows what could have happened. And then another thing happened to me one time. This guy named Don Schlitz came to town, and I was playing a club. He was opening up for me because I was the headliner, and he was just playing with he and his guitar. Well, backstage, he was being real smart ass and real cynical and real about everybody but me. He was being real nice to me, but he's being really not much of a nice guy to other people. And I thought, oh, he's got a problem, Anyway, so he started writing for this company that I was already writing for. And he walked up to me one day and said, I'm not going to pay my dues like you did. I want it now. And I went, yeah, sure, yeah. And so one day he was doing a session downstairs in the studio, and they'd taken a break for lunch, and they'd left the studio for the day. And I was going to take over with my band and do a demo. Well, we're all laying on the console, because I was kind of snobbing him at that point because I was afraid of his attitude, laying on the console with the lyrics to The Gambler.
Really?
Yeah. Which turned out to be the biggest hit country song of all time.
And he wrote that one in a hurry. He didn't bother paying his dues. He just went right for it.
That's right. I wasn't paying attention. I could have maybe been his publisher or helped him do it or something. I wasn't paying attention. So there's always, what I'm saying is there's good things happening all the time. Just I
had a situation that reminds me of happened to me. There was a artist named Josh Rouse here in Nashville, and his Chris Moon, I believe, was his manager at the time, and it was early on, and I was a young engineer, and they came up and asked me about recording or mixing or something, and I appreciated it, but at the same time, I think internally I thought like, who are these guys? I don't know them. I don't know who this guy is or whatever. Because I don't think, Josh, if you're listening to this, I don't think we knew each other yet then. And I remember just thinking, having that feeling like, well, I don't know what that is, so I'm not paying attention to it, just like you said.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, shortly after that, they went off and did something else with somebody else, and I kind of missed an opportunity to work with them. And then he turned out to be this fantastic songwriter and completely set a whole new genre of music and took off, and it was just great. It's so funny. It's like, you just don't know. But at the same time, you can't do everything. You got to choose something, and that's where your attention is. That's
true, but it's a lot of good things happening all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, so how about something that's sort of a favorite hardware tool in the studio? And now, before you answer, sometimes people think that means a recording gear. In your case, it could be anything, whether it's a guitar or amp or recording mic, or is there anything physical that you always like to have with you on sessions? Maybe a notebook.
I use AKG C12. And a Shure SM7 on my voice and voices I've been producing.
Yeah, those are both great mics.
Yeah.
Those are both great. We use the SM7 quite a lot,
Yeah.
Off the top of your head, how do they sound different to you? What are there things about the way they sound that you like?
Well, the mid-range, I think, is it the Shure?
Yeah, the Shure SM7 is the dynamic. Yeah. It's the black mic, the Michael Jackson mic.
I've used that on me too a lot. So it's just something I can't define. I can never tell you whether mids, highs, lows, or whatever.
Yeah, that's all right. You don't have to. We don't have to like over technify it.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like about the SM7 is that it almost sounds compressed already.
Yeah.
It kind of takes the voice and just
so you don't have to do it.
You don't have to do as much to it.
Yeah, there's a girl I'm producing right now. It's just beautiful on that mic. And I just love it. And there's another note down here, something about I use Sound Toys.
Oh yeah, Sound Toys. They make great plugins.
Oh yeah, that's
the Echo Boy and the Crystallizer and all these the Decapitator. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from using too many plugins, but because you can get away with you quick.
What digital workstation do you use to record?
Trying to think.
Is it Pro Tools or something?
Oh, it's what is he using now?
Or let's say some of them's Pro Tools, Logic.
He's using Pro Tools. He's using Pro Tools. He uses Logic for some other things.
Okay, all right. Yeah. And do you have your own studio space?
No, I don't.
You don't? Who do you like to work with now?
I've been working with Mike Esser. You know Esser?
I don't. No, not yet.
He's got a studio over on Trinity Lane.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Trinity is close to here.
Yeah, but I'm getting ready to move around because I have to get a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your rate here off the mic?
Well, I'll tell you after the thing, but it's very affordable.
Okay.
Very affordable.
Okay.
Well, so all right. So now, how about let's see. You talked about hardware tool. You talked about software, and I know we didn't want to get into the studio business, but do you have any just overall business advice for anybody as they embark on their music and recording career? Just any tips for like how to be smart in business?
You talking about people who own studios or
no? Just speak from your own perspective
in general.
Yeah.
Well,
what would you if you had a son who was starting out in music now? What advice would you give him for the business side of it?
The business side of it is really hard for me to say, because what's happening right now is I can't give any advice on that.
You just can't.
I can't.
All right.
Because I got 2 kids and I told them not to pursue music.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
If they can't figure out a way to make money, they're going to have to play live and go on the road and play live all the time.
Yeah.
And that's going to have to be their strength.
What do you think were some of the strengths that you had through your music career? What are some of the business decisions that turned out to work well for you?
Well, what worked for me was I trusted my intuition and didn't take no for an answer.
I like that.
Yeah.
Not taking no for an answer is something that I've used to describe my own approach to it too.
It's true.
I can't speak to exactly how much success it's brought my way, but it's brought the success of continuing to do it when maybe I might have wisely given up long ago. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. I learned determination when I was an athlete, and I applied that to my music a little bit, the determination, because I was not a really big guy or anything like that, but I had a tremendous amount of determination, and it made me a pretty good athlete at one time.
We were still on the team after they kept you on the bench for 5 games, so you were determined to be on the team, right?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. How about anything, an organizational resource, something you like to use online, or just some method that you like to use? Like, how do you keep all your stuff organized? You must have notebooks and songs you have to keep organized. You must have records and old master tapes you have to keep track of.
I keep everything on hard drive and disk and flash drive, everything. Double up on things.
Just double up as much as you can.
Yeah, because you can lose that stuff, and it's just.
Have you ever felt like it was hard to really understand and keep up with the technology?
Nope.
No,
I'm fine with it.
All right.
It's just a clutter of I've got so many hard drives.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, but
just duplicates.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably a good choice for that.
I bet you have a lot too.
I try to too, but I mean, I think I deal with the same problem, and I think everybody does. The more you do this, the more stuff you've got. And then you're like,
do you keep
and the technology changes. By the time you just begin to have a system, the technology changes, and now you got to come up with a new system.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But I think that, like you say, the best strategy is just back it up too much.
Oh yeah.
Too many places.
It's better to do that than
It's
not.
frustrating to have 6 hard drives and try and remember which one was the right one when you go back for a session.
Yeah.
But that's a whole lot better than having no hard drives when you go back for a
Just
session.
a little bit more time. It's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Let's say you were going to start over again with your recording, or let's say you just wanted to have a simple setup to record. What would you probably choose today for something simple to record with?
First of all, I wouldn't go to tape.
Right. All right. Fair enough.
I've already sold myself out to digital.
Yeah.
I don't know. I cut the album on Oshina, and the 3 or 4 things that we did on analog just didn't stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a couple of other albums I've cut on, and they just didn't stand up to digital. I don't know. I think now that everybody's into digital, your mind is trained for that high end,
Yeah.
And if you're not getting it, it's like you feel a loss or something.
Right.
But what would I do right now?
So you'd get a digital setup. You'd get a Pro Tools or something like that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And have you bought yourself computers, laptop or desktop computers to run Pro Tools yourself?
Oh yeah, I have, but I got rid of everything. I don't do any engineering at all. I trust engineers.
All right. Well, then that's fair advice. It's just like, if you're not way into the recording, then just find somebody to do it for you.
The first, I'll get personal here. I got prostate cancer a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I'm fine. It's 5 years ago. And the first thing the doctor said to me, he says, "You know who has the highest rate of prostate cancer?" I said, "Who?" He said, truck drivers." And I said, "What?" He said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm an engineer right now." He says, "Stop it. Either do that or walk around every now and then. Get up every 30, 40 minutes and walk around."
It's too much sitting in a chair, right?
Too much sitting. And you've probably had some problems with that past.
I definitely don't feel comfortable if I'm sitting down for too long. I like to move around.
Yeah.
I've thought about reconfiguring my studio so that I could just be standing while I work all the time.
And so I tried doing it. It made me nervous just having to get up all the time. So I thought, just write more songs and hire an engineer. They're great engineers and people that are very talented doing that and know more than you do. So just, use what's there,
Well, I feel, and I've said this before, I feel a little bit like I got screwed getting into music. So I know that engineering for a long time has been sitting in a chair and desks and stuff in studios. But when I started out in recording and when I saw the inside of a studio, it was a place with a lot of equipment and a lot of knobs. Yeah. And there was a lot of reason to move around and get up, maybe get up out of your chair and walk over and turn a knob, get up, play a guitar, play an instrument, get back down, go over to the tape machine. And during my time in recording, it's become computers, so much so that you literally sit in one place with your hands sort of rigid at your sides and you're just clicking on a keyboard and moving a mouse around and there's almost no movement left. Yeah. And I don't like that, I don't think that's a great way to spend a lot of time. So rock stars, I encourage you to get up out of your chair, move around. That's right, move around. I will even say this. I actually think in a way, I benefit by having a control room that's not perfectly balanced in one sweet spot for mixing. Yeah. So if I'm mixing music, I have to get up out of the chair and walk around to different spots and go listen to bass in the different part of the room and move around. Right. If I'm recording a band, I get up and move around to different parts. I think that's a benefit.
Oh, yeah. And also as a producer, I feel it's almost invaluable to bounce off of an engineer because it's something extremely special about that to me. It's like almost like more important than anything is bouncing off the engineer. They're always going to tell you the truth. Yeah. Yeah. Well, not always, but usually,
I think that there are things that you can do all by yourself where you can really get focused on an idea. Yeah. But when it comes to the end of the day and I look back at what it means to me to record music, I've accepted or I realized that the favorite thing for me is to spend all day in the studio making records with a group of friends. Yeah. It's hard to beat that for something to do with your life.
It's fantastic. We're really lucky.
Yeah. Well, so Mac, last question here is hypothetical. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, go back to, maybe 1960s Nashville, where the only tall building was the L&C building, which is now buried in a sea of skyscrapers when you look at the skyline. Like Nashville skyline doesn't look the same anymore. But if you could go back and find young Mac and give yourself one bit of advice and say, Mac, I've come back to tell you this is the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't be afraid to stand in the spotlight.
Okay, good. Tell us more about that.
Because I just never did. I always avoided stardom. Yeah. Like the plague.
Yeah. That was, who else said that on the podcast? Somebody said, was talking about remembering to get in the photo. Yeah. Yeah. Cause they weren't in the photos that showed the famous records they had been on.
Yeah. I had all these chances. The labels signed 3 or 4 major label deals, just kind of blew it off. Didn't play the game, I mean, the game was, kind of a little bit, do the drugs that they want you to do the women they want you to do, whatever you had to do on that end. But I didn't do that. But I'm glad I didn't, but I could have approached it differently. I could have been a little bit more accommodating to the labels. Always asked me to do things that I wanted to be around my kids, Yeah. And then rather than stay out on the road and tour with the rest of my life, Charlie Daniels played at that time was 320 dates a year. Charlie Daniels played 320 dates a year, and to me, that's not something I wanted to do. Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of coming through the system at the same time.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, I made a big shift in my life where I kind of let go of the major label world and traveling to make records and decided to come home to family. Yeah. And I've always said, I'll say it again, but my daughter's the best record I ever made. So I can understand. So Mac, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. Let our listeners know how they can find you. How can they learn more about you? Do Do you have a website you want them to go to?
Okay, www.macgayden.com. Facebook is Mac Gayden, or wait a minute, Facebook is, I can't read it.
It's probably like Facebook /
Gayden@united.net.
Okay, all right. We'll put that in the show notes if we can too.
Yeah.
Mac, thanks so much for joining us. It's just an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Lidge. I haven't seen you in so long. You look like a guru.
No, I changed my look a little bit.
Look like a guru from the Far East.
I'm just trying to make you look younger.
You look
by
great.
looking older.
I love your look. It makes me feel like I'm in California.
All right, groovy, man. Well, thanks so much, Mac. Look forward to seeing you more around the studio. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.